behind the idea to just sort of draw the line in the sand and say, tell us we can't do it?
Well, in 1954, a line in the sand was drawn by Congress and the IRS that prevented 501c3s from making political speech. And that line has caused pastors across the country to be quiet about issues that are relevant to their congregation, relevant to their communities, and they have been silent about it. And we have decided that we need to challenge that because we need to speak to those issues.
Now, when you make a statement like that, there are going to be some people say, but you're tax exempt, and so why should you have a special tax status and then get to influence an election? What's the answer to that?
Well, we are 501c3, and churches are 501c3 across the country. However, our right, our First Amendment right, should not be governed by regulations that come out of the IRS. Our right is sourced in the Constitution of the United States, the First Amendment, that gives us rights to speak. And as the prophetic voice of the community, we have a right to speak to issues that impact our community. There are 5 issues that we were concerned about in our church: abortion, euthanasia, embryonic stem cell research, human cloning, and same-sex marriage. The Bible has something to say about that. And my congregation wants to know what thus saith the Lord about those issues. And so as a prophetic voice, I must speak to those issues, and I must identify which candidate supports those issues and which ones are against them.
And you came out for Senator John McCain and openly said that from your pulpit. What was the reaction of your members? Did they get upset with you for taking that stand, or did they support it?
Well, my congregation is interested to know, what does God say about abortion? And if, in fact, Barack Obama is in support of infanticide and abortion, then they want to know that. And they want to know, should I vote for a man who is obviously supporting an issue or a concern that is the antithesis of what we believe in the Bible? And so once they understood that Barack Obama supports the issues that support the culture of death, they don't want to vote for a man who supports that. Now, Myron, they were very supportive of the fact that I did that.
You have been a supporter of Barack Obama.
Very much so.
You've heard what Stephan has said, but you have a different take on this in belief that, as a Christian pastor, that Barack Obama best represents your values. Tell me what led you to that conclusion.
First I'd like to say, as far as Stephan's perspective on our free speech right as pastors and as churches, we have to speak on the issues. The church is called to be a prophetic voice, in the community. But then it comes down to, how we interpret Scripture and, our perspective on the issues. For me, there are a lot of issues. Certainly, issues of abortion and those kind of things are important, but there are issues of injustice. There are issues of fairness. There's issues of equability, in so many areas. And for me, Barack speaks to those. There's also a need for significant and substantial change in our government. If the way things are going continue to go this way, then we're in for a much swifter, downfall as a nation. And, we can see that even if you look at it from a standpoint, a philosophy of history, of biblical interpretation even. So that's very clear. And for me, there's so many things, particularly, if I could take one stand on one issue, it's with the war in Iraq. And Barack's stance on that from the beginning. If, we want to talk about issues of death and injustice in war and how many lives are lost, not just on our side of the equation, but on the side of the equation of the people who live in Iraq and those areas who are dying needlessly in a war that many consider, including myself, an unjust war, then that issue has to be dealt with as well.
Stephan, let me ask you, in your congregation, you take a stand for John McCain, first ever African-American on the ticket for either party. Were there people who thought that you should have supported Barack Obama because he's an African-American and this is a historic moment for African-Americans in this country?
I think that's a general consensus in the community. Because he's black, we should support him. But Martin Luther King told us something different. He said that we should not judge a person by the skin color, but by the content of his character. And those 5 issues that And those 5 issues to which I spoke to you about earlier, I believe there's no moral equivalence to that. I don't raise green energy to the level of taking the life of a baby. I don't raise the issue of justice to the same level of taking the life of a baby. There's no moral equivalence to me.
We're running out of time, and I want to get.
I wish we had more time.
I do too. This could, believe me.
Sure.
3 ministers get together. We could go on all day.
Energized.
We could take an offering.
Well,
That's what we could do. It's what we do.
I tell you what, bring us back so we can talk about this and give us more time.
Myron, final word. Tell me, how do you address this with your congregation? Are you instructing them, saying this is how you ought to vote, or this is how I'm going to vote?
Well, as a person, as a pastor, I don't tell anybody how they ought to vote. I lift up the issues. When I look at the prophetic voice in Old Testament, those prophets spoke about issues, and they spoke about things and people who were exercising their choice to do the wrong things in the community and in the history of Israel. So I don't tell folks how to vote. I tell them, my personal perspective, and I lift up the issues. I lift up candidates, and their stand on a particular issue. But I always leave it to folks to make their own choice. Which certain people give you certain permissions as their pastor, and I don't take that for granted. And particularly with the folks, I try to lift folks up so that they're educated and they know, and then they can make the right choice.
Thank you both very much for being here. I want to say, Stephen Broden, Myron Cloyd, and something else I learned about